Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Earnest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. Definitely, we're trying to get our YouTube numbers up, so definitely want you guys to follow us there. But make sure you follow us also on our Facebook page, because we're able to share information more so on a day-to-day basis and one-on-one basis for different things that we have going on, be it workshops or in live events and there things like that. So definitely want to follow us on our Facebook page. And also, when you follow the podcast on the Facebook page, it will ask you to be, or if you want to become a member of our private Deal, Heal, Fulfill community. We're definitely working on that, definitely bringing some things to the community that can't necessarily share on the podcast, but definitely pouring into and adding some value in that area. So you want to make sure that you follow us on our Facebook page for the podcast and join the Deal, Heal, Fulfill community. Also, you guys, I'm going to tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast, but you got to stay to the end in order to get that information. But you can win $100 and it don't cost you nothing. You get it for free. But you got to stay to the end to get that information. But we're going to jump right in today. Just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Mr. RJ. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, thank you. Good. In this household tonight.
Good. So first of all, let me say thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere else and doing anything else, and I know you're a family man, so I know that you have other things that you could have been doing, but you took out time to be here with myself and my guests, and I definitely appreciate it. So, RJ, just to get started, introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us exactly what it is, who you are, and what it is that you do.
My name is RJ Zimmerman. I am a podcast host of a podcast called Untapped Keg, where I talk about the different perspectives in a sobriety and mental health. So hopefully you could take a little bit and put it into your life, because we're not all one for one. You can't do the same things and make it work. So at least there might be something that might interest you that you might be able to take out of the perspectives that we kind of look into. I myself, I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for 8.5 years. I did not use a 12-step program or AA. I did it myself and through therapy. And honestly, the podcast has really transformed my sobriety as well. Just talking with different people, hearing their stories, finding different perspectives. Like I said, that it's things that I didn't even think that I should look into, things I didn't know were kind of eating at me, have come up through the podcast and have really helped me to get on a journey of self-healing, and not just doing this, not drinking, but also just trying to be my best self.
Right. Good, good. So RJ, I want to so one of the things I kind of mentioned to you a little earlier about why I wanted you to have you on, because uh you said you were alcoholic, and although my personally, you know, I'm not an alcoholic, but there's a reason for that, and the reason for that, and I'm gonna talk a lot about my dad, and I hope you don't mind, Dad. I love you, but we're gonna talk about a little bit about my dad, because my dad was an alcoholic for a long time, and just because of that, the things that I seen was one of the reasons why I don't drink, you know, and I didn't drink, and then because of the things that I seen with how it affected him. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit, but I want to go back a little bit in your life, because I'm sure that, you know, of course, you didn't grow up just drinking automatically. It had to be some things that you were exposed to, or just some things that happened that you decided to even start drinking. So let's go back to the earlier years of RJ. And again, I speak for my family, you know, growing up with a dad who was an alcoholic due to some circumstances that happened in his family. Or in his life, should I say? So, what was life like as with RJ as a child, and even in the examples of just drinking, whether for leisure or whatever, was that something that was in your household, you know, on a regular basis that you were exposed to, or was it something you just got into as a teenager?
Um, well, it's kind of ironic that we've walked different paths, because we do have similar fathers, where my dad has been sober for close to 30 years now. Um, and he would say that he's sober. He he wouldn't even say sober. He just says he doesn't drink. He's never called himself an alcoholic and doesn't look at himself that way, which is fine. You got to do what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew growing up that alcohol, the problems with it, ran in my family. I saw it in my grandpa, my dad's dad. I saw it in my uncles, um, and that, of course, my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So I was scared to touch alcohol for a couple of reasons. And number one was that, but number two was I was scared to miss sports. So I didn't start drinking till I was 18. It was after homecoming. I got drunk for the first time, and it was just a feeling of everything in the back of like in my head slowed down. It was like I stopped caring as much, almost like was able to let go. And then everybody started to look at me different, like think that I was fun, think that I was a lot better person to be around, like I was accepted. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is really what I got addicted to, was that feeling. And that, I don't know why, but after that night, I didn't drink again until I graduated high school. And then I got drunk with my dad's coworkers, because in Wisconsin, it's legal to give your child alcohol at any age, as long as your parent is there. So I asked my dad for a real drink at a coworker's going away party. And he's like, all right, I'm going to get you so drunk that you're never going to want to drink again. And I proceeded to drink my dad's coworkers under the table. And they all thought it was amazing. Like, oh, look at little RJ. Because most of them knew me from the time I was, knee high. And that was like just cemented that, oh, this is how people like me more. Like, I'm kind of the center of attention, and I've never been that way. I never really wanted to be that, but it was just that feeling of acceptance and something I never had internally. So take that to college years, and it's a similar thing. Like every time we have a party, everybody's like, "Hey, where's RJ? When's RJ going to get here?" So that kind of really put it into it. And towards the end of my college years, I would know exactly where the specials were, dollar specials, $5 Long Islands, be able to go out every single night, get drunk. But I wouldn't just get drunk, I'd get blackout. So I decided I needed a change. So I moved cities, and I didn't know what I wanted to do because I had gone to school for 6 years, still didn't have my bachelor's degree. I'm a year from graduating. And I decided that I was going to go be a line electrician, high voltage line tech. So I go to school for that, and I stopped drinking because I knew that I shouldn't say stop. I cut way back in my frequency of drinking. But every single time I drank till I blacked out. Every single morning I'd wake up and I'd look in the mirror and I would just hate the person I'm looking at. And I mean, absolutely hate and loathe. And then my next concern is, who do I have to apologize to for last night? So I came to a place where I had graduated from line school with, everybody was like, you're going to go on and be great. And this is what my dad did. So I kind of knew what I was getting into. Anybody who knows about high voltage line techs, you're on call 24/7. Power goes out, they got to call somebody. And sometimes it's in bigger emergency, like there's a line down on a car, or firefighters are waiting for you to turn electricity off to go into a building sometimes. So I knew I wasn't gonna be able to drink often. And I got drunk one night at home with my friends, and I had no idea how I got home. And I had plans with my girlfriend the next morning. And I texted her, I said, "Hey, I'm not gonna make it." And she's like, "I know, I expected it." And I'm already not able to really look in the mirror. I can't keep anything down. I'm throwing up. And I'm like, if I want to have a career and a family, if that's what I want as a person, I'm going to have to stop. And that was the last time that I drank. It was my first 2-day hangover, and I couldn't keep anything down till about 2 a.m. For a full day, not even water. Everything came right back up. And from that point, I haven't drank, and really was focused on building a career, something I could do to support my family, and then building my family that I wanted to support.
Okay, cool. So I want to go back because you mentioned something that I think is a big turning point for a lot of people. Um, and so I'm already talking about my dad, but I'm gonna bring my brother in it too now. So I hope they don't mind. So my brother should be used to it because I talk about him all the time. So my brother is literally 1 year and 11 days younger than me.
Okay.
And we are like total opposites, right? In our personalities, in our lifestyles, everything. And so growing up, again, me seeing my dad, struggle with, alcohol and the things that came around that, to me, it was like, you know what? I'm not even, like yourself, you said you could see it in your family going back. We didn't have it in our family, like that, where you could trace it, but it was enough that it was just my dad. It was enough for me just seeing him and the struggle that he went through. It was like, all right, I ain't taking no chances because I don't know if it's heredity. So I don't know if that one drink, today might never stop. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not touching it. My brother, on the other hand, was like the opposite way. He's like, yeah, I want it. And I think that when we got into our teenage years, it also was a thing of acceptance too, because like I said, he's only 1 year younger than me, so we pretty much had the same friends, the same group of people that we kind of hung out with. So when we got in our teenage years, and there were, a group of us or a group of friends within our circle that, hey, they wanted to start drinking and smoking and things like that. On me, I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need it. I'm not doing it. But he, on the other hand, was like, yeah, I'm down for it. And that kind of took him. Again, we're totally opposites to both of us. But it's just that seeing the same example, you know what I mean, and just having two different viewpoints of that example. But also, like you said about, people liked you better, or you kind of fit in more. It kind of goes or adds to that, that group, the group mentality, should I say. I want to be accepted. I want to fit in. Me personally, I didn't have a problem with it. I'm like, hey, I'm a loner. I don't care about being alone, because I'm not going to do something that I don't want to do, just to fit in. And even to the point that, again, we still had the same friends. We still were in the same circle. So even after they started drinking and stuff, it was always like, all right, Ernest, when you going to drink? You got to get some of this. And I'm like, no, I don't want it. And so my thing that I started saying to them, okay, I will drink when I'm old enough to buy it myself. So we're in Illinois, Chicagoland area. So you got to be at least 21 to drink. Right. So I'm like, so that kind of gave me a couple of years, you know what I mean? But they didn't bother me, because I was like, hey, when I could buy it myself, then I'll drink. But they didn't forget that. So the day I turned 21, they was like, all right, let's go. So I did have my first drink at 21.
Good for you.
I did drink. I didn't get blackout drunk, but I did get drunk enough that I can feel it. I can feel, that I was my balance was off a little bit, And so again, having that example of watching my dad, I'm like, yeah, this is not what I want, And so for a couple years, on and off at a party or so or whatever, I did drink, but never drink to that extent. It's like, all right, I'll take a drink or whatever, but never like, all right, fall out or anything like that. Until then, I was just like, you know what? I don't care about fitting in, whatever. That it's just not for me. I was just doing it to fit in. It was like, all right, I'm done with that, And so I stopped drinking. I've never smoked, because definitely didn't want to do that. So never smoked anything. Never any other recreational drugs or anything like that. But again, just that example of how you got two people, that sees the same example, but yet it still comes to two different, mindsets of how they view it, So I want to talk a little bit about, because you mentioned about, as you were growing in yourself and coming to yourself to realize, you know what, if I want better, I have to make a decision to change, But I think that, and I think you mentioned a little bit about it right before we started recording, that is more to being sober than just not drinking, And I say this when I'm talking to anybody that's dealing with any kind of addiction. It's like, you have an addiction, generally it's for a reason. It's something that you're trying to get over, trying to run from, trying to do whatever, that you're leaning so heavily on this, substance, that you need to get away from whatever it is. So even when you stop using the substance, if you don't find out what that thing was that you need to deal with, then you're still going to have a void, and you're going to fill it with something else, And so it's like, you need to get to the bottom of whatever that is. So it's kind of, I want to talk a little bit about, just mental health and dealing with, with your sobriety, and how much of a part that plays, and, recognizing that, what, I want to be sober, but in order for me to be sober, is more than just stop drinking, but I have to deal with whatever this underlying issue is. So what would you say to that thought process?
I mean, you're exactly right. I think I mean, so from a young age, I think that a lot of men can relate to this. We're taught you don't feel, and if you feel, you don't show, and
Mhm.
you polish this stone that's in front of you, and you don't show it no matter what. And I think sometimes when we polish that stone enough, people don't realize how much it bothers us. And then we're also expected that we need to it doesn't matter how we feel, we have to provide, right?
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter if you're providing, it doesn't matter how you feel in the meantime as it's happening. So one thing that I've come to realize is that I didn't like myself. Like I didn't like who I was. I didn't accept the person that I was. And really it was because of a lot of different things. But I was taught at a young age that I couldn't really do much right. Whether that was on purpose or on accident, that's how I always felt. So I always searched for this validation on the outside. I always needed to be validated and it had to be external because I couldn't give it to myself internally. And I didn't even know that I needed to. So going through sobriety and realizing like I don't like myself. And at different points, it was, for different reasons. At different points, it was something else, and really it was dependent upon how much was going on in my life period. So when I was working as a lineman, like if I didn't have a lot of overtime and there wasn't much going on, I started to realize that I didn't like myself a little bit more. Started to question things that I would do. And then it was when people were critical, like I took that straight to the heart because that's bias, like a confirmation bias. Like that's confirmation about what I feel about myself. So that made it really hard. But I had it at such a deep level too that I didn't even realize I was doing it. And it was my kids that helped get me out of it. It wasn't, and I've been in therapy for about 4 years now. And I got diagnosed with ADHD about 3 years ago. And so that's really explained a lot of how my brain works. And then that helps me to realize why I do things and then kind of either take corrective action or give myself some grace. Like it's okay.
Mhm.
That's just how your brain works. And I realized that I had that void that you were talking about, and I was about to shove my kids inside of it. And that wasn't gonna heal it. I
Mhm.
did it with alcohol. I did it with friends. I did it with relationships. I did it with work. Did nothing. And now I have these kids, these two beautiful little children, and I'm about to take them and think that they're gonna fill that hole. And that realization came to me, earlier this year. And since then, I've really focused top of mind to get out of this neutral of look at this piece of crap in the mirror to just get to a level of, you know what, you're okay. You're doing okay. You're doing things you need to do, and you're starting to feel your emotions. And so back to like the numbing of emotions, like you almost feel shame when you get emotional, right? And sometimes it's you're told, "Oh, show some emotion," and then you start to show it. People, no, 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 not like that. No,
Right.
back away. Like I
Mhm.
meant, by yourself or in a different way, the way that I think is okay.
Right.
Um, but when you start to feel your emotions, and at first it really that shame comes, but also you get this fear because you don't know what it is. You don't know why your body's reacting in a certain way, and you can't name it. And I think that's the scariest part is you don't know exactly what you're feeling. Is it frustration? Are you consternated? What is it? And these are all big words, but they have meaning behind them that actually relate to life. And when you start to name things, you start to realize, oh, I'm like this because of what happened a couple days ago and it's still eating at me and I didn't even realize it. Or I'm like this because I'm hanging on something that I did wrong that everybody else has forgotten about, but I can't let go. So time to let it go. It's okay. We can do something different now. So to identify what that hole is that you have, and not just identify it, but understand that it's okay. It's okay to have that hole. It's okay that you have that. Guess what we can do now? We can make life better than what it is. We don't have to be miserable. We don't have to be at a point where nobody cares you're providing. That's not happiness, that's not fun. Let's get
Right.
put a smile on your face and a real laughter in your belly, and let's start living life like we can.
Yeah, yeah. I want to go back to a couple of things that you said. The first thing you talked about, you are expected to be the provider, and it's kind of regardless of whatever that you're going through, right? And so when I talk about my dad, and it's funny because you mentioned that you were a lineman. My dad wasn't a lineman as far as electrical, so to speak, but he worked for the phone company, so he ran phone lines.
Yeah. Similar,
So
very similar.
similar, right?
Yes.
And so one of the things that was a turning point in his life, and definitely in our lives also, was he worked for the phone company for some years, and then we moved to a different state, and they transferred him to to the other state, which was cool. Unfortunately, after a couple of years of being there, we decided, or not we, because I was a child, but him and my mom decided to move back, to Illinois. And when they moved back to Illinois, they wouldn't retransfer him, back to
Mm,
Illinois. So now you coming back, and they won't give you your job back, And so now we were living a upper middle class lifestyle, and now we're staying in. My mom and dad is nine of us, so it's my mom and dad and nine kids, and so you got yourself, being my dad, and your wife and your nine kids, and you're
yeah.
all staying in one bedroom in your mom's house, you know. And so to go from here, now you're all the way down to here, and trying to find a way out of that, so to me, I haven't really had this conversation with my dad, so I'm speaking from a third person point of view, as a child then, and but as an adult now, and how I evaluate it. Um, that was kind of hard to deal with,
Mhm.
and also on top of that, my uncle, who was my mom's brother, but my uncle and my dad were best friends like since they were childhood, and my uncle had got killed around that same time. So you
Oh,
got
wow.
your best friend from childhood that you spent your whole life with, you
Yeah.
know, and now he's gone, and then you come back, to the state that you were living in, and now they won't give you your job back, and now again you got you, and it's not just you, but it's you, your wife, and your nine kids staying in one bedroom in your mom's house, while you try to figure it out, and so I definitely believe that paid a heavy weight on him, which was
Mhm.
another reason why he started to lean so much, into the drinking, because you're not able to provide, and especially I think is one thing if that's where you always were, like if you always struggled in that area, it's kind of, you could look at it as a way of kind of being like kind of normal, it's like,
Mhm.
well, we had to struggle, but that's how it's always been.
Yeah.
But to come from a middle class life, which is where he was raised, because my grandfather worked for the phone company, so it was the same. Like I said, we have similar stories,
Yeah.
the same things. Like, okay, we used to this lifestyle, and then for my dad to also work there and provide this middle class lifestyle for his family, and then have the rug pulled from under you, and now you fall down, and now you're trying to figure out, number one, who you are, and I think that goes also back to, especially with the older generation, who connects so much of what they do to who they are.
Yeah.
Now you're looking in the mirror and you're like, okay, I'm not a provider. You know what I mean? I'm not this, telephone operator guy that I've been all these years, and I'm not this. And now you're looking in that mirror, you're not liking what you see. And I think that was one of the things that my dad dealt with, you know, over the years till, until he, years later was able to come out of it. But I think that definitely was one of the things that he dealt with. But it's something else that you said that I wanted to address. And you said when you went out, I think you mentioned that this was in your college days, and you had went out with your friends, and you're supposed to go out with your girlfriend the next day, and you was like, "You're not going to make it," and she said, like, I kind of expected that, you
Yeah.
know. Just looking now, and just me looking at it, and thinking how, if this was where your mind was at that time, to just hear that, like, I'm expected to not come through. You know what I mean? Like, I'm expected to get drunk. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not even are you okay? It's like, oh yeah, okay. That's what you do, and then you have to look in your mirror again that next day and say, wow, is this really the person that I become? And kind of dealing with that. So just from your point of view, because you also mentioned about your children. So how much do you think family plays? And I guess it's like a could be a seesaw. How much of the family, or who you are in retrospect of your family, how much does that play to drinking a lot? Or on the other hand, how much a part does it play to make me say, you know what, I'm looking at my family, I'm looking at my wife, I'm looking at my loved ones, and I want to do better because of them. How much is that, kind of, how does that play out as far as family, and just in your day to day, to be like, you know what, I'm on this journey and I want to do better because of them.
It plays a lot, both ways, both ways. One thing that they are opposites on, and there's a little bit of a seesaw, is when you're going through, you're drinking and trying to find this external validation. Sometimes that's because your family doesn't expect it of you, right? Sometimes it is because your family, I don't want to say pushes you to, but your self esteem is where it is because of maybe childhood, because of maybe, you know, growing up and things that happened uh, either when you were a kid through life, you know, how it happens. Um, you can look at your family, and I believe this. You can look at your family, and if you try to get sober for your family, it's not going to work. You'll be able to be sober for a while, but eventually the pull's going to be strong. The reason that you have to want to get sober is for yourself. Because if you're your best self, it benefits everybody else around you. And if you want it for yourself, then what's going to happen on the outside is not going to get inside as easily. And that doesn't mean that it can't be done. There are times where it does happen. But what I've seen and heard from other people as well, and what I've experienced myself, is it was me making that decision for me because I wanted a family. So I wanted to be my best self for them. And that shame and that expectation, like you said, that, wow, I really am not somebody who can be relied upon. I really am this person that I feared I would become. I've become. And just wanting to be better myself was the first step, wanting to better myself. Um, a lot of the time we think that we have to give something up, right? That's what it is. We're giving something up. But we don't realize what we are gaining. We don't realize the things that we are opening. And really, what you're doing is you're just putting this away so that you can go and experience life and you can actually live. And that's where I think it's different. It's not that it's that the thing that we think frees us, that allows us to be ourselves, right? It's like this mirage that's painted in front of us and makes us think that that's it. That's the horizon. That's what I want. But all of a sudden it goes away and you can actually see the real horizon. And you're like, oh, this is different. This is, I like this. And, it's like, it's one of those things where like when you're in your, substance use, when you're there, you see the little me and you think that little me is very large. And when you put it away and after a while, you start to be able to see the big us and yourself inside of that. And you can start to live a life that you never thought was possible. You were jaded about. You're like, that's a stereotype. That's not real. They're making that up. They don't really feel that way. They're just like they're going to extremes for it. But it is real. And family is big on both sides of it. And it's not always on purpose, either side. But ultimately it comes down
Yeah,
to
I think we
that person.
uh I think you kind of froze up
Oh
there,
no.
RJ. But I want to talk about hopefully. Oh, are you back? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just gonna kind of go into the next thing because I was hoping you still could hear me. But I wanted to talk about something else that you said, and that was giving yourself grace, and I think that I love that answer because that kind of goes into your what you were talking about, how you see yourself, and giving yourself that grace to say, okay, I am a work in progress, and it's okay as long as I'm making progress. As long as my mind is, I want to get better for myself, and I want to do this for myself. One of the things that I talk about before, not necessarily on this, but it's kind of in the same vein, is self forgiveness, right? Because in that progress process of definitely sobriety, you're looking at who you are, and as being who you are a compound of the choices that you've made, over your life. And when we look at some of the choices that we make, sometimes we hold grudges against ourselves because those choices didn't necessarily work out for our favor, in our favor in the long run. And so it's like, man, I could be so much better if I hadn't have did this, or I could be, had this job or whatever if I hadn't have done that. And so you kind of hold these grudges against yourself for the decisions that you make, which kind of again and kind of strengthens, the thing to drink more, to try to get away from that. But as you begin to show yourself grace in that space, you're able to say, I'm okay, and I made some decisions. So one of the things that I talk about with self forgiveness, and I even wrote an ebook about it that I have out now on my website. So, and this is the four forgiving me, the 4 steps to self forgiveness. And so I look at the word self as an acronym. And if we think about these 4 things when we're thinking about forgiving ourselves, it makes it a little bit easier to give ourselves that grace. And so that first, the S stands for season of life, which is what was the season of life that you were in at the time that you made that decision. Because as we go through seasons of life, so just as I mentioned about my brother as a teenager wanting to fit in, and so he started drinking at an early age because he wanted to fit in. So as an adult, I can look back and say at that season of life that he was in, he was just immature. He was a teenager, so now I can give myself grace because of that, and so the E, I asked what was the emotional state that you were in at when you made that decision. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, that works with me when my mom passed away a couple years ago. I was distraught. Emotionally, I wasn't necessarily in a good place. So some of the decisions I may have made in that emotional state may not have worked out, in the long run. But if I can acknowledge that I was just in an emotional state at that time, again, I can kind of start, giving myself that grace. The L would stand for limited information, because sometimes the decisions that we make is just because we don't have all the information, and I think about, whether it's alcohol or any other, recreational drug, or, addiction to whatever it is, because addiction come in a lot of different forms. If we know um, up front how it's going to affect us, if we know the outcome, or even some just the possibilities of what could happen, you know, if we had that information at those pivotal moments in our lives, we may have chosen different, we may have made different um, choices. And then the F simply just stands for, forgiving yourself by remembering that at the time that you made some of the decisions that you made, you were doing the best that you could at that time. And so when we think about it like that, again, that's self-forgiveness, but not just in self-forgiveness, but even of give yourself grace or whatever it is, to be able to look at yourself, but give yourself, you know in those parameters, to say, if I look at it how it really was, or who I was at that time, then you're able to give yourself that grace, and allow yourself to grow, from who you were. And I think that plays a big part. And so when you're talking about just in your own experience, and as you begin to change and to give yourself grace even within yourself, what were some of the parameters that you even looked at and said, you know what, I can measure myself on this, and I can see the changes that I'm doing, and I'm okay with that. So what was some of the things in your own journey, that you may notice, or took in consideration, to be able to give yourself that grace, to be like, you're doing okay.
I think the first thing is making a mistake and not berating myself. Um, there was a day a few months ago, and it was the first time that I actually realized that I was not at my best. I wasn't feeling good. Um, I might have been a little bit dehydrated. I didn't have very much patience for my boys, and usually I'm very, very patient with them. And the motivation wasn't there. And I used to just like be down on myself. Like, what are you doing? Like, how can you live like this? But that day I was like, I'm not at my best today. That's okay. Like, I know I'm not at my best. This isn't my normal me. It's okay to not be at my best.
Mhm.
That was kind of when I realized that, okay, I've grown to a place where I'm giving myself grace. I'm giving myself space to honestly just plain and simple not be my best, and realize like if somebody has a problem with that, that's not a me problem. That's a them problem. And that's not necessarily a place that I want to be, is a place where somebody has a problem with me not being at my best.
Mhm.
I think that's something that we go through life as. We always think we have to do our best, be our best. I know for me, like I would always think that I'd have to be perfect in every situation. And I would randomly remember times in sixth grade where I didn't handle a situation of very good, or like I made somebody feel really bad, right? Just like randomly, I remember the exact conversation. And it's like, I come to find out like that's part of ADHD. That's part of um, looking back on and self-loathing and things like that, where your brain just brings this stuff back up, right? And so knowing that that is a part of that now, that doesn't give me an excuse to berate myself, to not like myself, but it gives me like reasons like, oh, that's why I'm thinking about that. But you know what? And I love your self acronym, because you break down really giving yourself context. Like, what is the context of the situation then, is how I kind of look at it. And it's like, I didn't have the knowledge that I have now. I didn't know you could feel your emotions, and it's okay. Like that there is nothing wrong with feeling your emotions, despite everything I was taught from the time I was 7 or 8 till just a few years ago. Like, it's okay when something really pulls at your heartstrings and you cry. Like That's another thing where I've given myself a lot of grace is I've cried more this year than I have probably in my previous 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so good. It feels so good. There's so much that you can do when you cry. And I don't hide from my boys when I'm crying either. I let them see it because I want them to know that emotions are not a bad thing.
Right, right. Yeah. So, man, I'm really enjoyed this conversation, RJ. So, before we get off, I want to talk a little bit about the podcast, which was birthed out of your journey with sobriety. So, tell me a little bit about the podcast and the premises of it, and what do you hope that I'm sure that it is doing what you wanted to do, but what do you hope on a grander scale that it adds to the conversation of what you wanted to accomplish?
Um, so it's birthed because when I first went sober, I listened to a podcast with someone who was sober, and it made me not feel like made me feel like I was not alone. And so because it made me feel like I was not alone, I wanted to give that feeling to other people too. So I wanted to start a podcast. And about 2.5 years ago, I started it with my brother-in-law, and it's really gone through like 4 different iterations. And so really what it is now is we explore different perspectives into sobriety. So it's not just about your story, but it's about something else in your life that either you've gone through, you're going through right now, and you've learned lessons from it that maybe we can take, or we're just living life and we're doing great things. And so we've had people on who, they've really looked into the connection to addiction and adolescence and being a parent and the best way to parent around addiction. We've had on authors who talked about finding your emotions again and naming them. Obviously, that was massive for me. But also, we've had people on who are just trying to be loud and talk about addiction because it's okay. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And that's something that I want people to take away is like mental health and sobriety. Sure, they're key words, but it's about that journey and taking that journey and wanting to be your best self. That's what it is.
All right, all right. So RJ, again, first of all, let me say thank you again because I see the kids. Like I said, I know you're a family man, so you could have been doing anything else, spending time with your boys, but you took out time to be here with me and the listeners. So I definitely want to let you know I appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
So
I love what you're doing. So I'm really, really glad you allowed me.
uh-oh. Oh wow. We lost RJ. We lost RJ. But listen, guys. First of all, I was letting RJ know that I'm sure he'll watch this when it replays. Oh, he's back. Hold on. We got him. There we go. I said we lost RJ for a second, but it's all good. It's all good.
Me out of the studio.
It's all good, man. It's all good. But what I was saying was, I appreciate you being on. I appreciate the journey and the work that you do. So I want you to have the last word to just not only share, the podcast and where we can find it and your social media handle, but also just leave us with a word of advice or inspiration or whatever, a word of something that you want to leave us with, And I'll let you think of that for a second. Think on that. But to my listeners, guys, I told you guys that I would tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. And it's very simple. You can win $100 from the podcast by entering our super subscriber contest. And what does that mean? That means you must subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, and to our Spotify podcast. And when you do all 3 of those, then you text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 in order to qualify to win $100. So the contest is random and it's ongoing, which means it never stops. So once you're in, you're in. So once you enter the contest, you always have a chance to win that $100 from the podcast. And it's just that simple. So again, to be our win $100, from the podcast, enter our super subscriber contest. In order to enter, you need to subscribe to our YouTube page, to our Facebook page, and to our Spotify podcast. I mean, to our podcast on Spotify, the audio version. And then after you've done all three, which we will know because they will notify us, after you've done all three, then you text the word win, WIN, to 866-326-0730, and you qualify for a chance to win $100 from the podcast. So one of the things that we talked about today, I talked about self-forgiveness, guys. You can get my ebook on self-forgiveness, as well as check out my other ebooks that I have on my website of ebooksbyejames.com. So if you go to ebooksbyejames.com, you can get check out that ebook on self-forgiveness. You can also check out the From Males to Men, which is a male mentoring book, ebook for young men. And also I have a book called The 4 Core, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father. So those three are available now. We have many more ebooks that will be coming, but you can find that at ebooksbyejames.com. So RJ, again, let me say thank you for being on. And again, I want to give you the last word. Share your social media handles and things of that nature, and definitely where we can find the podcast, and also leave us with a word of inspiration, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Like I said, I love everything that you're doing. It's fantastic. It's much needed, and putting that content out in the world it's fantastic. So you can find me on social media, Untapped Keg. That's also the podcast. It's on youtube.com/untappedkeg, or you can find it on all podcast platforms. And then, for the final word, it's just the more you feel your emotions and the more that you can understand what is happening, with everything, like there's no shame there. You can't stop your emotions from happening, but you can stop how you react to them. The only way you're going to stop how you react to them is by being patient with yourself. When you can be patient with yourself, you can be patient with other people too, including kids.
Right.
So it helps being a parent, but also being your best self. And when you are your best self, it's better for everybody else around you. That includes your kids, that includes your spouse, that includes your parents and your friends. So if you want to be there for them, you have to be your best self.
That's it. We can't end it no better than that. Except one way, RJ, since they're there, let the boys come on and say hi.
Hey, do you guys want to say hi? Come here and say hi. Come here. You say hi.
Hi.
How are you guys?
I can't hear. Hi.
Hi, how you doing? What's your name?
And Norley.
Hey, okay. My name is Ernest. I just wanted to say hi. I saw you playing. Just wanted to speak to you. Say hi. How you doing?
Daddy, what's happening?
Oh, he's talking. You can hear him.
That was great. That's great. Again, RJ, man, I love it. I love it. I love the family. Like I said, before we start recording, hey, I love it when the family shows up, especially when you're a family man. So I love it. It doesn't bother me, and I don't. Hopefully, it doesn't bother any other listener. And if it does, too bad.
Yeah, they've been in probably about 20 of my episodes as well. Probably more, honestly. So.
No problem. I love it. I love it. That means you're doing what dads do, right? We work and we juggle it and we make it work. So again, RJ, I appreciate you for being here. Appreciate you for taking our time from your family to spend with me and my listeners, and I appreciate it. To all my listeners, listen, again, thank you guys for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And we're on a mission to help people to deal, to heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. And so until next time, you guys, we'll see you next week. Be blessed. Hey, guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget. It's not going. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.